Thought my handicap was on. I can't-
I'm sorry?
No,
They don't have any consideration.
Call to order the special call meeting of the Siloam Springs Board of Directors, October 29, 2024. Roll call.
Blair. Here. Long.
Here?
Wiles.
Here.
Hunt. Bristler. Here. Allen.
Here.
Carroll.
Here.
Thank you. So the purpose of this special call meeting is to consider changing the normal or the regular meeting date from November 5th to November 6th, 2024, due to the fact that that is Election Day, and there will be a lot going on. We have several candidates for the three positions, and I just, for the public's knowledge, the rules and orders for order and procedures for the Board of Directors that was adopted in January 23rd, 2024. For regular meetings, it says the Board of Directors shall meet in regular session on the first and third Tuesday of each month at 6:30. When a holiday occurs on any such Tuesday, the regular meeting shall be held on the following day at the same hour unless otherwise provided by a motion. The regular meeting date and time may be rescheduled by the Board of Directors in special circumstances, but when so done, the change must be made far enough in advance to allow for the normal public notification. So that is why we have called this special meeting, so that they can vote on changing that date. So with that in mind, directors, any questions or comments about what we are about to vote on? If not, do I have a motion to change the regular meeting date from November the 5th at 6:30 to November the 6th, 2024 at 6:30?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Long.
Yes?
Wiles.
Yes.
Bristler. Yes. Allen.
Yes.
Carroll.
Yes.
Blair.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Our regularly scheduled board meeting will be, and I'm sorry, Alan?
Mayor, I know they can't, well, you could actually vote on it in this meeting. In those board rules where it says the regular meeting and date time may be rescheduled by a board of directors in special circumstances, I don't know if the board would consider adding you to that list. That way, if you talk to board members and say, hey, we want to reschedule, you could decide that may be something, but the way it's written, that says only the board of directors can do that. That's for their consideration.
I think we've actually made changes before through the mayor making calls or emails. And because,
Historically, they would poll, the mayor can poll us, and she'd know if she had the vote.
because it's not standard city business, it's simply scheduling the meeting.
Right, in the way the board meeting, I was just going to bring that up. If you wanted to add mayor to that rule, then she could change those meetings without us having a special call meeting. But talking with our city attorney and me looking at it, I can't poll the board. So we had to do this. So again, it worked out because it's pre-agenda night and we're here. But in other situations, I was just bringing that up for your consideration.
Absolutely. And we will, as a board, will look at the rules of orders and procedure at the first or second meeting in January, because we have to do that for each year. So that is something that we might want to consider at that time, or if at the board's pleasure, if you want to make a change at this time, can they do that, Jay, by at this
Madam
meeting?
Mayor,
Because
Jay Williams, City Attorney, the current board rules are adopted by resolution, so typically any amendment would be by resolution.
by resolution, okay, thank you. So, it's, I'm assuming that since we do have to do this in January, which is coming up right away, that at that point in time, you all could look at revising that and then adopting a new resolution for 2025.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those in favor, same sign, and we are adjourned. We will now go directly into our pre-agenda meeting for the Board of Directors, this October 29th, 2024. Roll call.
Wiles.
Here.
Hunt. Rissler.
Here.
Allen.
Here.
Carroll.
Here.
Blair.
Here.
Long.
Here.
Thank you very much. So we will now move into our consent agenda, and Alan, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. Appreciate your board being here. Staff, the consent agenda is, we'll skip down to letter B because A is just the regular minutes. The first one will be adopted 2025 budget. Again, staff is here if you want to ask any questions. We'll be happy to answer any questions on the budget. If not, we'll move forward. Okay. C, approval of the 2024 computation of certification form. Killing that word tonight, aren't I? Certification, there we go. Had to spit a little bit.
So actually, Christina, Finance Department, this is actually just, we've discussed previously, I believe, that our property tax can be capped, and this is one instance where they've added enough, over $20 million worth of assessment to the value of the properties here within city limits, and so they're capping it. So all we're doing is we are allowing the mayor to sign the form, saying that we've looked it over and approved it, and we're sending it back.
Thank you, Christina. Directors, any questions or comments? Alan?
Okay, thank you. Then moving on to contracts and approval. Tony, do you want to come up and talk about this contract approval, wastewater treatment plant? About our action plan? I think I've let most of the board know in an email, or all the board, and then Tony will explain and happy to answer any questions.
Tony Brown, wastewater superintendent. We received a notice of noncompliance, and in
Tony.
order to,
I'm sorry to interrupt you, board. I also had Janae print out the contract, so it should be in front of you if you didn't see it in your stack. Okay. Sorry, Tony.
no problem. We received a notice of noncompliance from the state, and in order to perform a corrective action plan, which McClellan has put a contract in for, and we received that due to approximately since August of 2021, we have had 3.6 million gallons of sanitary sewer overflows occur in the city. Granted, if we look at that data, which I did, I don't know if you guys remember, in 2022 in May, we received 7.1 inches of rain in as little as 2 days. 3 million of that was that occurrence. So 600,000 gallons is really what we're looking at as far as real actual sanitary sewer overflows. The state wants us to take a look at that and make corrective actions. They want to see a plan moving forward, basically outlining what we're going to do to correct those situations. And McClellan has put a contract in. They've worked with us on the Headworks project. Some of the staff that they have on staff at McClellan also did a collection system study for wastewater, which looked at our collection system and identified areas where we can start looking at making those corrective actions. So we've got a lot of background information that we can go on and provide to the state to say that we're working towards that. And I'm available for any questions.
Yes, Ken?
Just out of curiosity, you said basically 600,000 gallons of overflow. What is, I guess for lack of a better way of asking, according to the state, an acceptable limit?
They would consider an acceptable limit 0 sanitary sewer overflows.
So that basically there's a no tolerance policy for that?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, Mark?
So we've had this problem, as far as I know, since the beginning of time. I can remember back in the day when they accused us of our biggest problem being going off Dogwood Hill, come down and basically the water would get to skidding on top of water and it would overflow there at that bridge. And we eventually had to basically will that shut to keep that from happening. Where is the, what are they saying is the problem now? Where's that at?
different places that are called different basins within the city that they've identified, and what I mean by they is McClellan's, RJN actually identified it during the collection study. So there's situations out in the collection system, and there's also an identified situation that we have at the plant, which is our headworks. Anytime we have large flows come in from the collection system, rags come in and can cause a clogging situation, which then would overwhelm our headworks equipment and cause an overflow there. There's several different basins that do have problems. I think the largest one was probably Basin 8 that I believe they started correcting. Is that correct?
Kevin Moore, Public Works. Yes, so we've done smoke testing and some other things since then to identify some of those areas, and they've been corrected as they've been found. But the state in their notice identified a couple things at the plant itself, and then the issues within the system itself. So we have, they identified the digesters, which you'll see the bid for that come before you at the second meeting in November. So that's already been, that's already in the works to be repaired. McClellan is already working on the Headworks project as well, and then this is an addendum to that contract for the corrective action plan. And then part of that will be the Headworks project, which we're looking at, early estimate is 6.8 to 7.1 million for that project. And then also repairs to the lines out within the city to cut down on that infiltration. So whenever we see rain, we're seeing those increased flows at the plant because there are breaks in our lines and other issues with the system causing that increase, and the state has asked us to work on those as well.
My main point is, back in the day, they convinced us quite convincingly that what we needed and purchased was a vehicle to house this super duper equipment with these video cameras in it that would run into the sewer, and we spent hundreds of thousands, if not millions, to buy all this equipment to set us up so we could solve our own problem, and it was a, pardon the way I say it, smoke and mirrors. We spent a lot of money for nothing. And so I think that we should pay very close attention to this problem. Again, it's been around forever, and they have had us throw good money after bad to not fix anything. So this needs to be paid very, very close attention to, because they'll come in and tell us to do all these fancy things, up to including video cameras and vans that you have to have and computers to make it all work, and it does nothing. So this is a very, we're spending, I think, $75,000, I believe is what this is, and there's nothing wrong with paying for engineering to have something looked at, but there is something wrong with smoke and mirror multi-million-dollar plans. Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you, Tony.
No other questions. Moving on to the ordinances. The first ordinance, 24-30, second reading, annexation of .21 acres, 2270 Don Hill Road.
Madam Mayor, Ben Rhodes, Senior Planner. Yeah, this is second reading for the annexation out on Don Hill Road. We're available for any questions. Thank you.
Any questions for 24-30? If not, moving on to ordinance 24-31, second reading, vacation of right-of-way, 800 block of South Lincoln Street.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm covering for Megan as well today, and this is one of her projects. We are also on the second reading for this, and we have not received any additional comments since last time. I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Directors?
No questions. Move on to resolutions. Resolution 49-24, significant development permit, 1700 block of East Kenwood Street.
Yes, this is Ben Rhodes again, doing all of these today. This is a resolution for a significant development permit. This is at 1700 block of East Kenwood Street. This has gone before the board before. I believe it was approved on July 5th, 2023 However, the developer never started the project, so it did expire. So they are needing to come back through to get a reapproval. The project is essentially the same as before. It is, as a reminder, it's a construction of a 10,381 square foot commercial office and bank building. And again, we're at the corner of Kenwood and Highway 412, right across the street from Kathy's Corner, if you're familiar with that area. The bank will have a drive-through, as you see in the site plan there. And I believe the only change that has occurred is we have a new gas line. From Black Hills, they inserted additional gas line. And I think some of the dates and things like that have been updated on the plans appropriate for current approval. This went to the Planning Commission on October the 8th and received a positive recommendation for approval. We had some discussion on driveways along Highway 412, as well as screening requirements west of the property. Commission recommended a 7-0 vote, and we are recommending approval with the 3 conditions as stated in your staff memo. We're available for any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Directors?
Questions from the board? If not, that's the end of our agenda. I just wanted to speak briefly.
I did have something, we went over the budget, and I did have a few questions for Christina since she's here. Remember the slides you gave us, Christina? The opening slide, like in the very first meeting. When we had gone through them, I had written down some things and did not ask, but I do want to know, on the 2022 and 2023, we had grant expenses, 940 on 22 and 670,000. Now, these are expenses. What would be grant expenses in 22 and 23?
So we have, just so you're aware, we've opted not to budget these in the last couple of years, but basically what that is if we have a matching grant that we have applied for, then we're putting the matching piece of that in the budget. That's what that was in those earlier years.
We have, whether it's a 50/50, 80/20, whatever,
Correct.
our portion would be in that spot. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Now, why are we not doing that now? We don't have any matching grants?
Well, what it is we've decided to just, when we come to the board to ask you to accept the grant, then that's when you
Okay.
would approve the matching portion.
Okay. And then on our streets, I had found where there was a cost of $200,000 listed for the Whippoorwill and Hummingbird rebuild on the notables list, but then when you get to the actual project costs, it's way up there. It's a lot higher. And so I didn't know what the 200,000 is that designing of it, or?
That may have been portion that came from reserves?
Oh, yeah, probably is.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Kevin, did you have a comment on that?
Yeah, if I may. So originally, that was all budgeted for this year. And then, Steve, since we're getting towards the very end of the year, the thought is that the portion of this year's budget would be basically the mobilization and the early work. And then he rolled the majority of that project into next year just to simplify the budget.
I still have to question, and I've asked before and never do get an answer. How are the streets chosen as to what gets rebuilt? It just seems like there's some here that may have some width problem, but I just don't see them as a major problem compared to, I mean, we're approving all of these housing developments off of Don Hill. And I've brought it up for years that Don Hill is not wide enough. There's no curb and gutter. The asphalt is breaking off the sides, that if you meet somebody on Don Hill, you might as well just pull over and let them go because you're taking a risk of dropping off and hurting your vehicle. So my question again is, how are these streets chosen? And why are they chosen the way they are?
I would actually have to defer to Public Works for that.
Thank you. So I'm glad you brought that up. So historically, it's been mostly a complaint-driven process, not just from board members, but from the public. So streets like Kenwood and Elm, which I think were on the books for next year, just simply from the volume of the complaints because they receive so much more traffic than Don Hill does. I will say one of the things we're looking at is adjusting the budget into next year. We may either do that in preparation for the next meeting or as a budget amendment early next year, because I'd like to instead put more money towards mill and overlays next year while we evaluate our system and come up with a written way to evaluate our system rather than having just a complaint-driven process. So we need to actually take a look at our streets and what our needs are and what needs maintenance work now to increase the lifespan of the pavement versus what actually needs to be rebuilt. Because in my opinion, we've been rebuilding streets when they have not reached that point in their lifespan yet.
Kevin, that's the first answer I've gotten that makes sense because I've asked and asked and asked and nobody can ever tell me how they get put on the list or why they get put on the list. And I doubt if the public knows that it's complaint driven because if they did, they'd probably be making a lot more complaints. But
Madam Mayor,
Just a minute.
in relation to what we're talking about now, I had a question.
Okay, so
I'm not
David?
done.
Yeah,
No, I
David
know
is-
you're not, but this is related to that.
Okay, so whenever David is through, we'll go to Mark, and then I'll come to you, Mindy.
Okay, well, this question does have specifically to do with what we're discussing here, so I
Okay.
didn't know if we wanted to go to another topic or not already.
I think we're going to continue probably talking about this street, so.
my question is, my comment is on Kenwood rebuild to only go from Mount Olive to Washington Street. I cannot imagine how it costs 1.2 million for such a very short distance. In addition, on Elm Street rebuild costing nearly $750,000, it does not have a lot of problems with the street as much as it has a width problem, and it's been that way for a very long time. But I drive Benton Street every time I come to this meeting, and that street down by the park is a nightmare. It is another one of the local in-town streets, very much like Oak Crest, even though Oak Crest is in city limits, it's half in the county. It is like driving an obstacle course. You have to go from left to right, and the patches we've done, some of them are long patches, big seam in the middle, lengthwise, but then you'll hit a manhole and oh my gosh, it's a nightmare. And so, again, I mean, I understand the bird streets. We've talked about them for a long, long time. They have been crumbled because they were never built right. They were concrete streets. But I will tell you, the first year I got back on this board, maybe the second year, Mr. Patterson sat right over here and said, I have to tell you, we have not kept up with spending enough on streets, and he was right. But we've not changed that. And the reason we've not kept up on streets is because the city decided years ago, with the help of the chamber director at the time and community leaders, to go redo a tax that we had a lot of money going to streets. And it got cut in half, the amount got cut in half so we could have a fund called Quality of Life. Because of that, we have not been having as much money go into the street fund, and therefore, we've had to be selective. I think we need to figure out a way to put more in streets, in some effect, find the money. But I I think we also have to be a better selective, as Kevin was saying, on the process of choosing. And I would like us to do a little more evaluation of the two we have listed, Elm Street and Kenwood, before we put a lot of money into them. Now I'm done, thank you.
Thank you, David. So, Mark, let me ask you, is your question
Same-
related to
same
that
topic.
also? Okay.
Yeah, I just want to talk about mill and overlay. I'm very much against mill and overlay. If the citizens don't know what that is, they come in and they grind off a couple, an inch and a half, 2 inches off the road, and they come in and they put an inch and a half of asphalt on top of that. It is merely a patch. It's pretty. You'll see it and you'll think it looks good, but it won't last long. And they do it every 3 to 5 years, and they mill and overlay and take that money. It's an expensive patch. You never, if you'll drive around this town and look at all the streets that have no curb and guttering, it's these big ditches that your children wreck in if they accidentally aren't looking and they pull in. And if you keep putting your money into patching and you never fix the actual problem with the roads, you just keep it up. And we gave the money away and said the roads were fine, and they were not fine. And we have these problems that have been here for 30, 40 years that we paint or we mill and overlay and make it look pretty, but it's still unsafe. It's a bad mistake to decide to mill and overlay. I don't know when this board quit being the ones that decided what projects were next, but it absolutely should come back to this board. We should have a plan and say, here's what we're going to do in the next 5 years. They may change next year, but here's our goal for the next 5 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. So I'm not sure what I like, but Mindy? Okay, first I do, I agree that
No. Couldn't hear you, and I couldn't hear you either.
it says it's connecting.
May just have to hold the button down.
Yeah.
Now, this, and now the other one's green, so there may be some sort of feedback here. I agree about Benton and Don Hill. I mean, those are streets that we have heard a lot of complaints about over the years, and I agree. I drive that Benton Street too. Both of those are in need of repair, in my opinion. And I may be wrong on my memory here, but I thought a few years back, Bland came to us with a whole street improvement plan. And there's some sort of calculation that goes into where streets are improved or what streets are priority. Kevin's kind of looking like you may know what I'm talking about here. I remember there being a calculate, if they are within a certain distance of a school, then they get higher priority, they get more points, depending on where they were located. So have we gotten away from the improvement plan then? And I understand that even then, I think it was presented as, this is what our plan is now. It is subject to change. But if we're not going to go on a complaint-driven, which I almost think it could be a both and, not and or, if you get enough complaints and then you also meet the calculations, but isn't there a street improvement plan?
There is. So I believe we renew that plan every 3 years, and it is due to be renewed. And I will say, so part of that evaluation that Justin was talking about and that we'll look to do is different types of damage to the pavement present themselves. They degrade the pavement at varied rates. So
Right.
for instance, cracking across the pavement is not going to be the same as pavement that's raveling or something as it actually starts to depress or rutting. Those are all treated differently, and some of those things you can mill and overlay. Some of those things you have to actually go down and rebuild and replace the subgrade underneath. So those issues have to be handled differently, and that's just not been the case up to now.
But I guess my point is more that there has been a plan that has been presented to us, and it was presented as subject to change, but there were very specific ways of determining which streets needed to be repaired. So we've sort of got a foundation.
We do. I think there were 13 streets on that list, and the proposal at the time was actually to do it as a bond issue and do all 13 at once. and that wasn't moved forward with. So that makes up the majority of our current list. So things like Corridor Road, I believe was on there, portions of Kenwood, which have been rebuilt over the years, things like that.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, David?
I recall seeing that list at least 3 years ago and went through every street, went and looked at it and knew. I don't recall Kenwood Rebuild or Elm Street being on that list 3 years ago. And so that's my question of how does a couple of streets suddenly get thrown on this list if they were not there a few years ago? The other thing is what Mindy was saying is there being reasoning, whether it's near school or complaints or whatever. My question is, the planning department is looking at the overall master plan overhead, what we're doing, where we're growing, approving housing additions, et cetera, et cetera. If we are doing so many of these in a certain section, as we've seen, whether it's on Lawless Road or around the corner off of 43, it's still connecting through to Don Hill, and the majority of people getting to that area is going down Don Hill. I think we need to be looking at where are the housing additions going, and is that additional traffic going to affect the router street, the arterial street that's getting to all of those homes? And I don't think we've kept up with that demand, knowing where the housing additions are going in. A good example is the housing that's been built on the west side of North Hyco. North Hyco is a very good street, so it doesn't need it because it's been taken care of. It's probably in the next 5 years going to have some wear and tear depending upon how well it was built, because there is a lot more traffic now. But Don Hill was not, and now there is a lot more traffic because of these homes, and I think we need to be looking everywhere else to be questioning if that doesn't need to be a major factor on what streets we decide. Because for the life of me, possibly Kenwood, because it is a problem, but I'm blown away to see 1.2 million for such a small amount of area being fixed. Thank you.
Mark?
On the suggestion of 13 projects done in a bond issue, I can say that several years ago, we brought this up. We had enough money in reserves when we were going to bond it out, but we decided to do 5 years' worth of street plans to get ahead because you have this list and they get large and they keep growing. And we decided to do 5 in 1 year and take it out of reserves and then just let it build back up over the next 5 years. And as a result, we had so many more projects to do that we got the larger companies to come and bid, which cut the cost significantly. And it turned out those 5 projects nearly, and it could have been a gift from God, but it was nearly the same as 1 year's worth. So it was very wise at that time to plan big projects and get the great big companies in because they get cheaper asphalt when they have bigger jobs. They get the equipment rental's cheaper, and it's for nearly the price. It was more than 1 year, but for nearly the price of 1 year, we got 5 years worth of the streets project. So I think that's something well worth looking into. I don't know about bonding. There's a lot of debt expenses that come when you are basically in a municipal league way of doing things is borrowing money. That's what we're doing. But if we had the reserves, it might be really wise to take multiple big projects to get a lower cost. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Madam Mayor?
Yes. Dick?
Just for retrospective, when management changes, policies change, and as Mark was alluding to, the previous administrator, 2 administrators ago, had done a study and found that, yes, it may cost more to farm out to an outside company to build a street, but it also allows you to do more than one street by having a different company do two different streets. The last administrator convinced the board that we could buy the equipment and do it ourselves, and it was too much work. And I think you have to weigh the cost of equipment and the cost of personnel and everything and say, it's been studied before, and hiring an outside firm is usually the better way to go to do a large project. I just keep saying, I think we need to remember and learn from history. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Anyone else? Thank you, Christina.
Well,
Thank you.
real quick,
Mark?
I did kick up a little dust in the past about the dump trucks, and I would like to bring up that I talked to Mr. Dennis Kendi about the dump truck. And yes, it is a big, nice version of a dump truck. And no, they won't use it every day for the big things that you need a big truck for. But I want to say that from my opinion and what I discussed with him, that when you need the big one, and that's when you need it, not having it is very expensive. So then you have to pay someone to bring the big equipment in, and the little bitty two-wheel or four, only got one axle in the back dump truck can't haul asphalt. So the 5 times a year that you are needing to haul asphalt, if you don't have it, then you're spending a great deal of money on rent, or whatever, however you're getting the bigger truck for. So I came out a little hard and strong against it, and I just wanted to tell the board that it is a good idea. It's at times when you have a department that's frugal all the time, and they say they need more, they probably do need more. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Anyone else? Yes, Lisa.
Can I discuss anything besides just budget?
Sure.
Okay. Well, never mind. Oh, when is the meeting for the Kenwood Street? It's November 7th, at what time?
November 7th from 4 to 6 here in the boardroom.
And can you kind of give an idea of what that's going to be about? Like, are you going to have poster boards, or what's that going to look like?
It'll be a drop-in meeting, similar to what we did for annexation. So Garver will be here. They'll have multiple boards set up with the projects, or the project. They'll have the full length of the street rebuild, and they can walk people through any questions that they have. Letters have gone out to everybody along the project that doesn't have a secondary route. So any of the subdivisions that are connected only onto Kenwood, those residents have received letters for that meeting. And it'll be, there's no presentation or anything. It'll just be drop in, and I'll be there as well just to kind of answer any questions.
Will you be taking input from them citizens, or
Yes.
from any citizen, I guess?
Yes, there will be comment cards as well as a comment log on the website that people can put in. So Garver is at about 60% plan set right now, and so they'll have time to bring those comments in with their design. If there's anything that they need to be aware of and make changes to, we can make that happen.
I agree with David. I agree with you on contracting out, but Lake Francis makes me have a different opinion sometimes. That has been a nightmare. And I drive down it periodically, and I like that I can drive down it and not get dust all over my car now. Can you give us an update on that?
They paved to the east side of Washington Street. I'm expecting a paved date for the last portion towards the end of next week. There are some more manholes that they had to lower and some other things that kind of take that time. But we'll release an update to the public as soon as we have a paving date for that last couple hundred feet that's been left gravel.
Okay. Is that the manholes that had to be lowered? Because like I said, I drove down there. Is that one of those that's already been paved area? Because those were sticking up quite a bit.
They'll stick up a little bit, so there's still another 2.5 inches of asphalt to go down.
On top of that, but, okay, but those aren't the ones that are needing.
Right. At the very west end of the project, right before you get to the Memorial Park, there's a manhole more or less in the curb, and then right behind it, there's a second manhole in the sidewalk. Those both have to be adjusted.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that one has, I don't know. I remember the Kenwood Street behind Taco Bell when we did that project, but then, and then you look at this project and it's hard to weigh. We just want our citizens happy and to be able to get into their driveways, and to be able to take routes that they normally take. So, guess it'll be a case by case for me.
I think we have meetings every day on Lake Francis, and Kevin and I were meeting today, and we're 78 days behind today. And we're not happy with that. But we're constantly in contract, pushing them to get this done. The manhole, we talked about that today. One of the issues, they're going to have to come in and completely cut that down and then re-pour concrete. That takes, 2 to 3 days to get done. We have a new superintendent now that's been working with us the last couple of weeks, and we're getting there. We're
And how
getting
much is
there. I
their
know people
fine?
aren't happy, and I totally understand.
What's their fine per day?
They're about 19,500 right now. It's $250 a day. And that's the
$150
max
a
that we
day.
can charge, but we have gotten with Jay, and we're looking for future projects where we could make that fine a little steeper.
Okay, so that's not defined by state, that's defined by local ordinance?
Evan, I don't remember on that. Is that, I know it's 250. I think that's the actual, what we charge as a city.
So
That's our max.
we're looking at raising that probably to 500. It varies project to project. Essentially, it's compensation to the city for the project going long. So that covers our staff costs to supervise the project and things like that. So we can't make it an exorbitant amount unless there are other things tied up with the project. Like, for example, I think with the digesters, we're looking at, as that contract goes long, there are actual costs to the city for additional chemicals, additional things that need to happen at the plant when we're down the digesters that they're working on. So just as an example, but with the street, we simply don't have that.
I've had people ask me, directors, that, hey, why didn't you just go with another company? The problem, if I fire that company that's in there right now, I'm 60, 90 days behind to find a new company, get them in there. They're probably going to want to make changes. And now we're into January and February. They're working. I go by there about every morning, about 7:30, and check. And, they're out there, they're working, and we're making progress. I know no one's happy, I'm not happy, but we're getting close.
And so do directors in the future, this is a question for Jay, I guess, can we base our decision based off of past history with a developer that develops a street?
Madam Mayor, Jay Williams, City Attorney. A bad experience with a contractor is something that the board may weigh in awarding future contracts, so absolutely.
Madam Mayor, I think something to keep in mind with this too is they had 3 contracts with the city at the same time, and that's an awful lot. So maybe we need to keep that in mind. Who we're using, that we don't give them so many at one time. Because that was part of the problem. I know we went out there in January, February, and work wasn't being done because they were over on Simon Sager and Brentwood and taking care of other places.
Did we do an RFQ and RFP on these?
We did a bid, so.
A bid?
Yes, so we received bids, and state law requires that we reward it to the lowest responsible bidder. And at the time, when we were looking at awarding the project, we had not had any issues with TriStar. Obviously, now that's not the case since they're in breach of their contract by going long. But at the time, we had used them in the past and had no issues similar to this. So moving forward, we've already notified them that for at least a period of time, they will not be considered a responsible bidder if they're the low bid.
So on a bid, you have to take the lowest. But on an RFQ, you can take, an RFP, you can take the qualified. You don't have to go with lowest bidder, is that not correct? Because,
State law generally requires that we let the matter for bid and take the lowest responsible bid on
even if you decide to do an
construction
RFP or
projects.
RFQ?
I'm sorry?
Oh, construction-wise only?
Correct. well, construction and other projects. Certain things are, there are certain matters the city can purchase without sending it through the bid process.
That's when they would do the RFP or RFQ. Okay.
The only other difference on bidding is if it's a local company, you can have a certain percentage that it can still be over the minimum and you can award. If it's a local silo company.
That's 12%.
I think the next lowest bid that we have, correct me if I'm wrong, Ken, I think it was $500,000.
Yes, for Lake
Mayor?
Francis, it was $500,000 over. So I believe in our ordinance, it's either 1% or 5%, but that caps at $500, a $500 difference for the local company. So it really doesn't apply to major construction projects.
Andy? So I had the first thought you had when we talked about contracting, although my understanding is this is more the exception. It hasn't happened a lot like that. And as far as a company having multiple projects with us, that shouldn't have been a problem, because if they said that they could do these projects, they should have had enough staff available to do it. They shouldn't be having to go, the same staff go from one place to the next. So hopefully there were other things that caused this to be a problem. But I did want to just clarify the Kenwood. David had mentioned a Kenwood project that you felt like was going to cost too much. Is the Kenwood project he's talking about the same one that we're going to be meeting about on November 7th?
No, those are two separate projects. So
Okay.
November 7th is from Highway 16 east
Yes,
to Bruce
to-
Rutherford.
Okay, that's what I thought, which I think you mentioned 1.2 million. I thought, well, that's a bargain for that much road if it's the same
No, this one is
one.
just between Washington and Mount Olive.
Okay,
Oh, okay.
okay, gotcha. I just wanted to clarify, because I know, you were talking about needing to take into consideration building going around, and I know that is one of the pushes for the Kenwood between 16 and Bruce Rutherford, because we have all those houses out there, and I remember when we first started approving those developments, we had a lot of people that lived along that street very concerned about adding to the traffic,
So is this thing that you're talking about, is this to review if we're going to do it, or has it already been decided we're going to do it and we're having public input on the project?
The design is 60% complete, so this is the public input opportunity.
Is this the one that the developer is going to put $1 million into, or is that a different street? No, that's Quarter Road.
That is, yes, that's Quarter Road, and they're doing that street entirely on their own.
Okay.
So this is, about 2 years ago, I believe, the city got a grant for the design, and so Garver has been going through.
This is from Highway 16 East?
From Highway
on
16
Kenwood?
East to Bruce Rutherford, where the school district owns that property.
It's
Has there been any commitment from the school about it?
I've not seen anything from them as far as when they plan to build, if that's what you mean.
That's quite a distance, and it's been a huge problem for a long, long time. Of course, there's a whole lot more development now, built and ongoing building. Do we have any guesstimate of what it could be?
I have seen their preliminary estimate. I don't off the top of my head remember what that is. I don't. If I
Door
had to-
number one?
If I had to recall, it was like 5.8, somewhere around there. I could go back and double check, but
As I said, it's a long, long distance to go
It is a
from
long
16
stretch.
to Bruce Rutherford. And it's another one of them that I call an obstacle course street. Yeah. But thanks for bringing that up, because I got confused too when we start saying the name of the same street, but
Got lots of Kenwoods
yeah,
around.
I was going, well, now, are we meeting over this small little section in here? So I had a question too, if Mindy's done.
I'm done, thank you.
Yeah, David?
I just want to say, I asked questions after the last time we talked in here about TriStar and the complaints about Lake Francis, and this was before they'd done anything recent. And I didn't realize until talking to staff that this was bid out 2 years ago. I mean, that's how long it takes from a bid to get it. And the frustration that I had was, we gave 2 streets, or did somebody say 3, to the same company, And I just don't think that's a good idea. And I think, no matter who the company is, I don't think we should, because they did all right on Sager Creek. And we couldn't figure out why they got started and then just left it open and hanging. They were doing streets in other cities, I assure you, I checked it out. They were doing other projects that I think we kind of got pushed to the side, and they're like, it's $250 a day. So I cannot stress enough the damages that we can award for, as Chris was saying, it's for staff time and all that. I think you cannot put a value on the inconvenience to public cost. The cost of the public being run through the ringer of inconvenience for 78 days. I don't think $19,000 is even a drop in the bucket for what I think the public living over there would measure their frustration level. So I think we definitely need to be looking at a much more serious number per day, because otherwise a company is just going to blow it off and say, we'll just keep doing this project over here that we're getting paid, and this other one, they're just charging us $250 a day. I did want to also just stress that I just don't think the public is fully aware, because this is, I don't think anybody can argue, this is the number one complaint in the entire city is streets. And it has been for a while. But when you consider that the tax revenue, the money you spend on sales tax to go to streets was cut in half in 2016 by a vote of this board going to the people to vote on it. And it was sold on the wonderful idea of having a quality of life fund. And I have argued about this from the beginning, that quality of life is subjective to every single person. And it became a slush fund is what it was. It was basically used for whatever they couldn't find to spend out of the budget. The money that had been from 2006, it was a 10-year sunsetted tax. It was going into streets and was cut in half when it was readjusted in 2016. And it had all these leaders saying, it's not a new tax, it's not a new tax, it's just an extension of it. That's not true. If you have to go back to the vote of the people and you readjust what that tax is going for, it is a new tax. I got in heated arguments that, no, a sunsetted tax means it goes away. And in fact, this one, with the quality of life, is supposed to go away in 2026. I would imagine that somebody somewhere, the powers that be, will come and say, we need to re-up that for another 10 years. I just pray we do not have quality of life as the benefactor of it, because it has not helped the streets to have half the money that we used to have going into streets from our tax revenue. And I'm just trying to explain that people can complain and complain and complain, but they don't really understand that by their vote, by their own vote in 2016, they themselves caused the money to be cut in half. And 10 years of 25% instead of 50% going into streets, 10 years worth is a lot of money that did not come from the tax revenue to go into streets and instead went to other things. So it's something that people need to think about when they are voting for taxes and extending taxes, et cetera. Always look at where the money's going. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, David. Mark?
I just want to caution this board, we're saying that because of poor management of one company, we are saying that we should never give one company the biggest, but that was the advantage in, I don't remember what year it was, that we did the 5 projects. The advantage was we gave all the projects to one company, and so they did it cheaper because they could do and bring so much more work and get it done faster. And so just because one company is poorly managed, you shouldn't take away the advantage you can get by making the projects bigger. So the punishment, I don't know what could be done when you make the original contract, but the punishment for being late, if that's the problem, should be raised in some way, figure out how to sharply punish them for failing at the back end. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
I think you can also look at the age of a company too, or like how old, I mean, I don't know how old is it TriStar? But
TriStar.
like, there's a lot of established, well-known, big companies that would never be delayed because of too many projects is what I meant.
Yes, Lisa.
Kevin, is Brentwood Street, I mean, not Brentwood Street, is Brentwood, the drainage completed?
I believe so. I had asked them to come back and reseed the bottom because it hadn't grown, the grass hadn't taken off to our standard, but as far as the work itself, I believe it is completed.
Because that was another one of their projects. It was 2 streets in that.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Anyone else? Alan?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just want to make the board aware of an issue that we have going on, and I think I've talked to some of you about it, is that we're losing 1 million gallons a month in Don Hill.
Of water.
In the water. One of the issues that we have, we've exhausted everything we can do. Right now, we have drafted a letter. It is an attorney review, and the letter will go to the apartment and house owners in that area that their water will be shut off in 60 days. I don't know any other way to get this done. The POA doesn't want to pay for the fix. The landowner doesn't want to pay for the fix. We can't do anything. I could send a crew in today and get it fixed, but the line is not, it is off our main, and we don't own it. So I can't, there's no way I can fix it. But we're losing over 1 million gallons a month, and this has been going on for a long time. So again, I have no other means to do this. So I just wanted to let you know. I've talked about the judge and different other things, and Jay doesn't think we can't do that. I'll be happy to answer any questions, but this is, I think, the only avenue that I have.
Lisa?
So I'm the one that brought that to the attention. And I also am the one that brought to the attention that at that time, they owed $100 and something thousand. Now we're at $200 and something thousand that Don Hill owes the city of Siloam Springs. That's a cost that affects our citizens. And I guess I don't understand, we got a judgment because of the way the lines were. So we had to take it to court, and we got a judgment to fix those lines so that we can shut off the people that were just, their bill kept going up and up and up. And we didn't want to shut off the residents out there, so we got a judgment through a judge to reverse those lines, to fix those lines. And we're standing, am I correct on that so far? And so we corrected those lines, and we were able to shut off that faucet of money going down the sewage, basically, honestly. I don't understand why a judge cannot give a judgment to give us an easement to fix that on that property. It seems like it would be quicker, more efficient, and it doesn't affect those people who are not at fault. Because how many residents is that? Do we know how many residents? Like 60?
40. Well, it's 40 homes.
40 homes. So it affects those families that have kids, and their water will be turned off because of 2 people, because of a couple. And we're affecting these other families, and if we shut off their water, and they decide they still don't want us to go out there to prevent that from going, we're affecting these families. What happens to these families? So I still have a hard time believing a judge would not give a judgment and saying, okay, wait a minute, there's families affected by this. We can get an easement because that is our pipe. Well, it's not our pipe, but we can fix it. Is it our pipe?
Madam Mayor, my understanding is the leak is taking place beyond the city's master meter, which means it's on private property, and it's not our line, it's not our system, and it's not our property beyond the master meter.
Right. But when you shut it off, you're shutting off not the people whose fault it is. Well, you're shutting theirs off, which I don't care if you shut theirs off, but the people that, there's families that are being affected. I guess it's hard for me to think that we couldn't ask a judge to look into it and give us permission to fix that. Because it's our water running through those lines. And then when you go out there, I mean, like I've contacted Senator Dees. I mean, his office is involved with the sewer problems that I stood in. And then the water problems that are, everything else is dry around here. But you go out to Don Hill and the grass is growing and they have a pond. I mean, it's nice. I mean, because of our water is out there. So that a judge would not let us rule? You don't
Well,
think?
I think the question is there a part of their water system that the city of Siloam wishes to ask a court to condemn and dedicate to the public such that that becomes a city water system? And if there's a determination at some point that, yes, this should become a city water system, then there is a condemnation procedure to follow, where the city would have to pay for the taking, and if whoever the owner is did not want to provide the easement to the city, then the city would have the right to pursue condemnation.
And that's the only process. So if I don't mow my lawn and you come out and mow my lawn, you can fine me for mowing my lawn for me. Why is that not the same difference of fixing that water line?
It's a different set of rules. I mean, that deals with unsightly, and there's a whole set of Arkansas statutes that deal with unsightly properties and what a city has the right to do on unsightly properties. There's not a similar set of statutes that say a city can go onto my private property to repair or not repair or move my water line.
It's about a $200 or $300 fix, is it not?
I can't give you an exact cost, but it's something that we could fix, but I can't legally do it.
And we can't get a judge to
Danny's
do
gone
it.
out there, we've all been out there, and it's an
But that was
issue.
the same situation with the other, that he gave us a judgment, the judge gave us a judgment. We were not supposed to touch those lines, but we did.
I think the difference, so with the previous judgment, we weren't fixing the line for them. We were actually taking a portion of that line out of service. And so,
Can we not take a portion of that out of service and keep just, I mean, let the woods have their water turned off, put another,
it's possible, but it would still affect more than just the one owner's property because it's in the middle of a
location.
line. Yeah.
it's right in that road.
I'm sorry.
It's because of that, it's right there where that road is.
Yes, it's a location issue.
I wish the federal courts would get a ruling done.
So the question is there anything else that can be done to prevent the families from losing water?
We've exhausted about every means that we can. This is a last resort. We will continue looking at other means other than this. And when I say 60, that doesn't start today. We still got to get the letters, got to get it reviewed, make sure we're legal, put it out there, and the day we go, 60 days. But $1 million or 1 million gallons of water, we
And
can't continue that.
I want to say, I know it's not staff's fault. I know it's the Woods' fault. I just hate that families are being affected like they are because somebody doesn't want to pay their bill or have taken money from them for bills that they've paid for utilities and we didn't get that money. And so it's just a sad situation, and I'm not blaming staff.
I totally understand.
I'm just asking.
This is not easy. You know, I wanted to bring it to the board, but I don't want to put it on you. That's my job. You know, and we've looked at every way possible to try to fix this. We've had crews out. Danny and I were talking, I think it was yesterday, and I think they've got one of those septic issu's fixed. We're not seeing it anymore, so that's fixed as far as we know, correct, Danny? But we still have the water issue.
The septic where the EPA's involved and Senator D's office is involved?
Pretty sure,
That
Danny,
is
is that the
fixed?
one? Yes.
There was none out there when we was out there looking. No,
There was what?
there was no sewer coming up where it come out last time.
Right, and that's, I mean, and we talked about that.
It's cured, but it's fixed where it's not blowing up, right down to the water.
But it's not fixed, it's just, because there's the whole system out there is condemned, is it not?
Counties handle all that.
No, they're not.
Yeah, I think at one time that I looked, and it was about $240,000 that we wrote as a city, and that's not including, if I'm right, Christina, with this water leak now. And it's getting more expensive and more expensive and more expensive.
David?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will state, 3/4 of the people in this room were not in their leadership position when this first came aware to city management. Mr. Patterson knew about it from the previous administrator and didn't do anything about it. Lisa brought it up, made it public knowledge, and kept insisting something be done. When I heard her bring it up, I asked Mr. Patterson myself, why did we not put a lien on the owners for Don Hill as soon as this occurred? Because we were the first ones that were being adversely affected by absentee owners of Don Hill, living in California and not doing anything to take care of their property and not paying their bill. And the answer from Mr. Patterson was, well, we could have, and by then Lisa had gotten on the board January of 19, and this had been a problem for quite some time, and Mr. Patterson said, well, we could have, but we waited too long, and now there's so many other people with claims in front of us. And it's infuriating because if we had made a claim, if our attorney had done such a thing, we could have been in first position and we could at least own a piece of Don Hill today if they were never going to, I mean, 200,000, it was 100,000 when Lisa first brought it up. Now it's $200,000. And that's a cost to the citizens of Siloam Springs because the owners of Don Hill will not pony up and pay their bill or allow the lines to be fixed. And so it's a bad situation that's just gotten worse and worse, and it didn't have to. It didn't have to. That's the frustrating thing, is it could have been if we had just gone to court and gotten a lien on the property and at least have an asset for the cost that we're having to dole out. So Lisa, I have to hand it to you. You were out there ringing the bell, and still nothing got done. But yeah, this has not been at all staff's fault. Staff has tried to fix this a long time ago and didn't get anywhere. But thank you, Lisa, for bringing it to the public's knowledge.
Madam Mayor,
Betsy?
so I've gotten a little lost or a little confused in all this. So we're going to shut off the water to fix the line.
No, ma'am.
We're not going to fix the line. We're just going to shut off the water until the people who own it fix the line and pay the bill? Because I know they've been collecting utilities from the residents this whole time.
Main thing we're looking at right now is to get it fixed. Once it's fixed, we could turn it back on and
But the owners have to fix it, right?
correct to the owner of that property.
Okay. Okay. And then once it's fixed, then it'll be decided how to handle the bill going forward?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And our hope is, Director, is that before this is shut off, that they'll fix it, that they realize 40 people, 40 homes are going to be without water. I'm hoping they will fix it.
Yeah.
That is our hope.
Yeah.
They haven't cared so far. Sorry, I'm not trying to be rude, but they haven't cared. And it's in federal court right now, and that's why we can't get a judgment. That's why we can't do anything. we're behind the federal government, and we're waiting on the federal government. And it's been in court for a long time. It does.
But again, I didn't want you guys, I wanted you to hear this firsthand from me and not later. This is just the course of action that we're headed. I don't see any other possibilities this time. But we will continue to research and see what we can find.
Well, I appreciate staff trying to fix a long-term problem.
Will the people who live there know what's going on?
Yes, they'll be served a notice, yes, ma'am.
Right, along with the owners? Okay.
Having that letter, is that in door hanger fashion or hand deliver? What is your plans with that?
The plan would be both, so we'll mail it to the owners, the POA, and any renters that are there just at the physical address. And then door hangers as well for anybody that we know is on that line that would be affected. The tentative date we're looking at right now is January 15th, just to give enough time for the mailing and everything, to make sure that they have the full 60 days that we plan to give.
Cutoff would be January 15th.
Correct.
And again, that could, I would like to stick at 60 days, but once we get this, we just have to see how the date falls. I don't want to do it on Christmas or anywhere near that. We will monitor that as we go forward. That's something I will be very aware of. It's something I will keep the board apprised of. And again, this is the last result. I just can't see leaving this on another 4 or 5 months and losing 5 months of 5 million gallons of water.
1 million gallons a month, right?
Right now, especially we haven't had rain, we're, pretty much in a drought. I mean, it's
You don't want to send this in December and be a real nice Christmas present. Let's wait until after the first.
we let it go, we could have an ice skating rink over there pretty soon.
Right.
All right, directors, anything else? Not, Alan, back to you.
Turn it over to you, Mayor. Thank you for your time, everyone.
All right, thank you, board. Thank you, staff, for being here. Appreciate it very much. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion to second. All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.